Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Michael Regina. I am the author and illustrator of the all-ages horror graphic novel, The Sleepover from Penguin Razorbill. You can pick this book up wherever books are sold, and I am here to talk with you and give you an update on my next graphic novel project, Deepwater Creek. Since the last video, one of the major questions I posed in that video was that I was struggling to make a decision on whether or not I wanted to do final art in watercolor or whether I wanted to do final art digitally. Since that video, I've made a decision. If you follow me on any other social platforms, you may discover that that decision was that I have decided to go ahead with final art in watercolor. I'm really excited about this decision. It definitely took a while for me to get there, and in no small part has it been from the encouragement from others who are out there, fans of my work, who have seen the sample pages I've posted and just let me know that no, this looks good and that the project looks like it is looking great in watercolor. Really and truly, that sort of encouragement has really helped push me over the edge, because it's not so much that I'm ultra sensitive or whatever the case may be with working with this book in this format. I am a fairly new watercolorist in general. I've only really been doing this for about 3 or 4 years, which feels very new to me. And making such a leap from I work 100% digital and digitally coloring books to something where it's down on the page was a pretty big leap for me. It was made easier by the fact that I know I have a process for inking digitally and then transferring those pages to something physical and then watercoloring over it and sort of fixing some of the loss of pigment that happens as the watercoloring process goes, that really sort of catapulted me to say, like, hey, I can do this, because worst case scenario, the page gets messed up, I reprint the page, or whatever the case might be. It really alleviated some of that stress of what if things go wrong, you know. I also discovered that I could heighten and fix some of the line art inside of Clip Studio Paint and Photoshop due to the fact that I'm working digitally with some techniques that I saw through a video through Matsuya Zorbanowitz. I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but I'll put a link here or wherever side, so you can see sort of his process of inking and then watercoloring and then scanning the watercolors in and layering. His video series on the comic book Uragi was a really inspiring video series for me in working towards watercolor. In fact, it was his work and the work of Tyler Crook in Harrow County that really turned me on to, wow, we can make beautiful looking comics in watercolor and it will print well. There's been a few things I've had to make peace with in going this route, though, one of which is just I've had to accept that my art is fundamentally going to look different by working in watercolor. There is a level of polish that you get working digitally that just doesn't happen in watercolor. But that's okay, because there's a lot of really cool, random, haphazard things that happen when you work on a piece of paper with watercolor that you can't replicate the other way around. So it's sort of trading off. Like you're trading off a certain level of polish for a certain level of authenticity, organic feeling, and spontaneity that you get in traditional colors that the computer just doesn't pull off. And watercolor is one of the few remaining techniques that I think we have not managed to really capture digitally. We're getting close in some ways, but in some ways we aren't. And by the time I manufacture the program so much to make it work and look like it's authentically watercolor, I could have just watercolored it and been happy with the results. So, you know, I just figured this would be cool. Pages are done, though. Just show off a few pages. I've only put together maybe 5 pages of 5 to 7 pages of Deepwater Creek in this format, but I think it's looking really sharp. I don't know if the computer or the camera will catch it well, but there's a kind of close-up look, and you can really just see some of this spontaneity come out. So, and then there's also intermixed in here some sample pages for another project that I'm working on. But really happy with it. And one of the cool things when I'm all done with this project is there will be original art. So maybe some original art goes up for sale at that point. We'll see. Yeah, so update on that. Working towards making this book in watercolor. Really excited about that. Also a little scared, but it's going to be fun. The next big order of business is I have really pumped the brakes on some of the thumbnailing processes I've been down. I've roughly thumbnailed the book all the way through structurally what's called the Dark Night of the Soul moment in the story, which is sort of the big moment of complete despair and realization that, you know, within the story where you kind of pivot in the storytelling, you pivot within the storytelling to push towards a climax. And I've hit that point in the thumbnailing process, and I feel very confident in my third act, my finale, as far as like I know broadly speaking that the events I have written are going to happen, and they're going to happen the way I've written them. And now it's going back through the other 3/4 of the book and really like streamlining that story. As I've been working through it and reading through some of the thumbnails, things that bugged me in the script that came into the thumbnails that I thought maybe would work out better are not working super well. So I've decided to pause any thumbnailing until I'm done with rewriting that section. My process for doing that is I've actually printed everything out into this binder. The entire book has been printed out in the thumbnail format, and I have been making notes along the way that kind of detail changes that I want to make to my script. So I've been reading through this, and it's been pretty cool because I've identified some real strong pacing concerns that I have with the book in the in sort of the 2A act of the book. Structurally speaking, in a 3-act story, you have your beginning, your setup, which is your act 1. Your act 2 is sort of everything in the middle, and then act 3 is your finale. Well, I kind of break act 2 up into acts 2A and 2B because 2A is all the way up to the midpoint, and there are structurally certain things that need to happen there. I know I'm being very scientific about my storytelling here, but I believe very much in story structure. And I'm focusing really intensely on streamlining and cleaning up some of the stuff that happens there so that there's less redundant storytelling beats and so on. But it's coming along. I think the book is looking good. And the changes that I need to make are less about throwing things out and more about combining things, which is not as difficult. So it's coming along. Lastly, the thing I'll talk about here, I'm trying to keep these videos a little bit shorter, but lastly, the thing I'm developing here is I have been changed by the act of creating 3D models for my books and then using Clip Studio Paint to convert those models to line art. And this has been a really big revolutionizer in the way I create comics, because I'm able to create custom assets through a program called SketchUp, which many of you are probably very familiar with. And I've been building my own 3D elements there and then bringing them into Clip Studio Paint and then converting them to line art and then sort of manipulating that line art to look less rigid and obviously look more like a drawing. The genesis for why I've been doing this is that the boat design within Deepwater Creek I've had is a fairly unique one. There are tons of boat models out there if you want something that looks like a very new, modern version of a boat, or if you want a rowboat or something like that. But I wanted a boat that felt like a smaller version of like the Orca from Jaws, meaning that there's sort of like wood paneling and it just has a unique vibe to it that a modern boat wouldn't have. And so I couldn't find a model that did that. And the reason, the kind of the path logic was I had drawings. I had been drawing this boat repeatedly by hand. Like I would position the shot and I'd have to come up with the boat over and over again in the shot in the story. And I was noticing that I was getting like elements of it wrong consistently, and was the angles were sometimes very difficult to maintain. And so I started going down the thought process of hiring someone to create a 3D model that I could use within the book. But my friend Stephen McCraney really pushed me to try to learn how to use SketchUp to design this for myself. And he sort of said, take the money you were going to spend to hire somebody, press pause, and see if you can develop the modeling skills in SketchUp for yourself. And then when you're done, you'll have this whole skill set to create any model that you might need. And I was resistant to it for a few days, and then I got about the business of teaching myself. And honestly, it was a really frustrating process for the first week or so, until I finally had kind of a breakthrough design-wise, where I started to really understand like how SketchUp works and how to use it to accomplish the goals. I'm not like a master at it or anything, but I definitely feel like I'm able to create just about anything I need need in general to create an element or something I need within my book. And then at the end of that process, it's like exactly the way I would have drawn it, and I now have a model that I can position and move. And the process for doing this, for converting a 3D model, is pretty easy. If you use Clip Studio Paint and you're on a Pro version of that or an EX version of that, you essentially import your model, and then in the layer for the model that you have in Clip Studio Paint, you can right-click that and select to convert to lines and tones. It'll pull up a dialog box for you to make your own your setting options and so on. And then you click OK, and there's your line art. I set mine up in vector art because if I do it in vector, I can change the line art to look like my pencil brush or my inking brush. So it looks even more hand-drawn. That's probably a topic for a whole other video, but it is groundbreaking. I mean, since learning how to make the boat for me, I've made the house that the Martins live in, Wade Martin and Andrew Martin, the main characters of the book. I've designed the dock and the backyard and the shed. I'm getting ready to design the interior of the shed and a few interior shots of the book that involve the characters sort of interacting with one another. And it just sort of frees me up design-wise, mentally, as I'm creating, to make the shots that I need to make, and then either convert that to line art or to use that as a guide in finishing the final line art. It's sort of like just a step forward from some of the ways I've used these tools in the past. Very cool. Worth a YouTube search if you use Clip Studio Paint. Go look up converting line art models to line art if you want to see a bigger tutorial. But very cool. Also with SketchUp, highly recommend learning how to use that tool as well. Tons of videos out there. It's not even worth me being the person that explains it, but tons of videos you can watch out there to teach yourself SketchUp. Be patient with it. If you want to try this, you will break through and you will figure it out. Not to mention they have an entire 3D library that you can get models down from as well. And Clip Studio Paint has their own 3D engine and their own 3D software and 3D library. So get out there. So to recap, making books in watercolor, so I'm in some ways moving away from computer technology and moving towards some traditional skill sets, and then doing some major rewriting of the 2A act of my story, and then lastly 3D models have really revolutionized the inking and composition process of this book in a way that I'm really excited about, to know that like my boat model will be consistent and on point and all that sort of thing. So super cool from my perspective. So that's the update on Deepwater Creek. I hope to have more for you soon. I hope you've been enjoying this series. Feel free to ask me questions if you have any, and maybe one day, as this channel has been growing, we can get together and I can do a live stream and work on the book and answer questions as well. I'd love to do a Q&A in general, so if there's questions you have, feel free to leave them in the comments or drop me an email. Also remember that you can sign up for the mailing list in the link below, and I send out a regular monthly newsletter. This is sort of my new thing, which I just share kind of some of the recent videos in case you missed them. I talk about recent inspiration, books I'm reading, shows I'm enjoying, and any other general updates that are kind of more appropriate to share there. So feel free to sign up for the mailing list if you haven't. and look forward to talking with you. Thanks for joining this channel. The subscription list has been growing every day, bit by bit. It's very exciting for me. Thank you. I will talk with you all soon. Until next time, go make stuff. Go make some things. Bye, y'all. Take care.